Welcome to Surviving the Dream with your hosts, Casey Arnold
and David Conley.
We're here to talk to people who seem to have their dream job and find out, what did it take? Is it what they imagined? Is it worth it? How do they do it?
Join us as we uncover the secrets of surviving the dream.
Hello, Dave.
Hi, Casey. How are you?
I have to say, I know normally we jump right into it. I have a little PSA that I really need to get off my chest.
Do it.
Okay. So I have an upstairs neighbor who maybe not so legally rents his place out short term, even though you're not supposed to do that in West Hollywood. And his renters have flooded. Flood's a little exaggeration. They've leaked water into my apartment a couple of times.
I'd like to know how much water that entails for a flood.
No one was waiting outside my window. So I called.
You've got a duck pond in the living room.
Right? It was coy. But yeah, close. So I called my insurance company, to make sure there's no mold, whatever, try and be responsible. It resulted in no big deal. He got things fixed. It was fine. But because I was trying to be responsible, I now have claims on my insurance file, which is apparently like the same as having points on your driver's license for actually doing something, which means now my insurance company doesn't want to renew my insurance, even though I've been with them for 22 years and the result of their payout was $0.
I hate that.
I'm glad you hate it too, but I just want to make sure I get to the PSA part for everyone so they don't have to learn the hard way. Unless you're like, oh, fuck, this is going to cost me $20,000. There's no other way I can do this. I cannot afford it. Try not to call your insurance company because it's not going to help you in the end. Please don't learn the way.
Before we get to, you're going to have to explain this to me as an American. I don't understand insurance because I went to the dentist and I got a letter saying, oh yeah, you've got to pay for this. And I rang them up and I said, why? And they go, well, you get 2 checkups a year. And I went, oh, I've had 2 checkups a year. They go, well, actually, I was out by a few days. I went, oh, well, we just got the dates wrong. Oh, sorry about that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I could explain
says
no. To you, but it makes no fucking sense.
What's that?
I said, I wish I could explain insurance to you, but it makes no fucking sense.
Well, no, I don't understand it. And I when I first moved to this country, I didn't understand the fact of insurance that you pay people. So in case something goes wrong, but if something goes wrong, they go, ooh, no. That's not,
well, then you're fucked. Okay, so now I'm done venting. I just want to make sure people know and they don't find out. So
I'm on your side on that one.
Thank you. Anyone listening. Now I want to get to our guest because I'm super excited to talk to her because I don't know about you, Dave. I don't know about our listeners. Maybe I could use a little bit of boost of what she does. I think her job is super cool. And probably we could all do a little bit with more of it. She's a Mojo Recovery Specialist.
What is that?
Well, I'm going to let her answer. She's a speaker and author. She also has her own podcast, the Real Undressed Podcast. So if we don't cover all the good, juicy stuff, you can also go and check out her podcast. But now let's ask Deborah Kagan. Please tell us more. What is a Mojo Recovery Specialist? And welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. What do you mean you don't know what that is?
I've seen Austin Powers. I know what it is.
Exactly. Hello. And doesn't everybody wake up like on career day in, 6th, 7th grade and say, I want to be a Mojo Recovery Specialist when I grow up?
I wish they did. How much more interesting would the world be if that was the career du jour?
Deborah, you're going to have to educate me. What is a Mojo Specialist?
Well, in short, I'm a mentor for women, right? To put it in more simple speak.
So I'm redundant in this podcast. But I get it.
You know what's great? Actually, all the things that I share and I teach and I write about, they're actually not gender specific.
Oh, good.
And I do love men who are, supporting women for sure.
Like Joe Biden supporting women right now, isn't he? And I don't want to get political, but right now he is, isn't he?
Yes, and bless him for it. So, but yeah, so it's what I do is I'm a mentor for women, and what that looks like, it's under the personal development umbrella, and it is all about confidence. It's about embodiment, and what I call living a turned on life. So that's the encapsulated version of what I do. The phrase Mojo Recovery Specialist came up because I didn't feel there was a real job title when I built this business. And I love and everything that I do, and I'm sure we'll kind of do a little backstory, but everything that I do, and I've worked for myself now for the last 27 years. And everything I do is all about energy. And when we start with that premise, when we start with this fact now, thank you, quantum physics and quantum physicists who have proven what metaphysicians have known for tens of thousands of years, right? That everything is actually energy. I thought, okay, cool. Well, what's like a fun word for energy? And mojo. Mojo is your life force. It's that life force. It's the energy that moves everything in life. It's what makes the grass grow. It's what makes, the birds sing. It's what Peter Hobbs, it's the Higgs boson. Okay. So it was Peter Higgs, and he's a quantum physicist back in the late 60s, early 70s, who discovered what they call the God particle, which is this energy that they couldn't quite quantify, frankly. And they saw that it was the energy, and it is the energy that moves all of life forward. And so I thought that was pretty darn cool that they have now scientifically proven that.
That is very cool. Also, so I looked up in the dictionary because I wanted to hear what your definition was compared. The dictionary just kind of describes it as like a magic power mojo.
Yes. Which actually, if you look at the etymology, and I mean, you might have got to this, but the etymology of the word mojo, they believe comes from somewhere in Africa. And because the medicine people in the tribe, the medicine man, the medicine woman, would have this pouch of herbs or sticks and special stones and special items, little amulets that would represent your magic, your magnetism, right? And they would wear that, and those became known as a mojo pouch. Which some people still use to this day. But it wasn't the actual stuff in the pouch, right, that is the mojo. That was just to remind you of your own mojo. But yeah, it does. It is so, and they called it your magic, your personal magnetism.
Okay, so is that why? So I started reading your book also, and I've noticed that a lot of your stuff comes from like sexual and sensual empowerment. Are you saying that like and forgive me if I'm skipping ahead because I still want to learn how this became the dream job. How did you, I guess, decide to pair like sexual, sensual empowerment with your energy, your mojo, and how that empowers you to do things, and how did you realize that could become a career?
Right, because it's not exactly obvious.
But it's not a choice on career day.
Yeah, and let's get really real here, because my whole career since I have been working for myself, 27 years now, has been ultimately I think about healing myself, going through the things that I needed in order to heal things that had occurred earlier in my life. Grew up in a home of domestic violence with my mom's second husband, and that I lived there for 8 years. Then the first time I ever had sex, I was raped, and that was at 15. And so, that of course, I didn't tell anybody for 6 years because back then there were no real resources or anybody to talk to. And there was definitely no Me Too back then. And, but what was beautiful was I went to film school because that was my first career. But I made a film about the experience, which I realized, creativity, my voice, turning pain into something creative and something that could be, not necessarily a warning sign, but a way to transform the experience into something greater, into something that had meaning, into something that could maybe be useful for others. That was what really got me on this trajectory of, okay, there was stuff that she went through in your life, and you're now starting to utilize it to heal yourself, to find things that are healing yourself. And other people became interested. And I thought, oh, it's not just me who's dealing with this. Oh, and so my life, and in film school, which is, I went to NYU, and I'm a native New Yorker. And so,
Also,
New Yorkers.
NYU film school. We'll have to talk. Keep going.
Okay. And, so New Yorkers, right, we're pretty straightforward and all the rest of that, and not really known for our woo-woo metaphysical side.
Truth.
Okay. So I'm talking back in the late 80s, early 90s, I was already into gemstones and energy healing of spaces. And this was very weird. And I started to get healthy in terms of my food, also very strange back then. So when I moved to Los Angeles, which was 30 years ago now, it was like I found my people. And it absolutely just quantum leaped my own experience with all of these metaphysical healings, these practices, and my studies, and of course use of them. And that's what started to put together the spirit as well as the sensual and the sex. Because at this point in my life, now I'm just kind of jumping way ahead, but at this point, they're all the same, because it's all energy, which is what we started with. There is no difference between your spirit and your sex. I mean, on a frequency level, you can have like a not a great day, and your spirit might be on a lower frequency. And maybe you're having a not delicious sexual connection with somebody, and that could be on a lower frequency. But again, it's all energy. So there's really no difference, which is what my big soapbox is at this point to help people recognize, because there's so much shame, and we could go on and on about the issues surrounding the ownership of our bodies, of our own sensuality, particularly those of us in a female body. Although men have a lot of shame around it too, I've discovered over all these years. But David, please,
Can you
chime in for us.
Can you define what you mean by energy? What does that mean to you?
Well, energy is, when you walk into either a restaurant or someone's home, frankly, and you're immediately like, oh wow, this I kind of feel good. Or you walk in, you're like, ooh, okay, something like, I don't want to be here. Nothing but it's no visual, like you haven't had an interaction with a person. Have you had an experience like that before?
I think, yes. Yeah. But I mean, the times when I've felt specific, like an energy there might have been a history, and I'm trying to, like, I remember going to Dachau, for instance, or going to, Amsterdam, and going around the loft there and going, oh, there was a feeling there. Anne Frank's, the Anne Frank Museum, and I've wondered in retrospect, because those are the two times when I felt like that specifically, where I felt it almost in the stomach, but whether it's the weight of history and that knowledge when you go in there, but there is something when you go into those specific rooms where you go, gosh, I wasn't expected to feel like this. Right.
Yeah. Those are two, very intense examples. I've been to actually both of those places myself as well.
And you can definitely feel all the heaviness.
Yeah. So, and, that is certainly the weight of history, but everything. So when I'm talking about energy, I'm talking about frequency. Mm-hmm. And even if you rub your palms together, and you do that quite vigorously, all right? So even if you want to do that right now, come on, listeners, right? Where you're like, we're cave people attempting to make fire. And then you stop and just have your hands cupped like about the size of a tennis ball. Mm-hmm. Now, and so, you can also move your palms apart, but do you feel like sort of a invisible webbing almost? Anything there?
I do.
You have a sensation, Casey?
Yeah. But I know so Dave, but I feel like I don't want to define for you, but maybe I also try and attempt. You know how even just like you meet a new person, or you're like you're like at the movies and you feel great. And all of a sudden someone sits next to you and you maybe feel that same, not quite as heaviness of when you go into the place, but all of a sudden you just like feel a heaviness or a tension. And then you're like, oh, why my body feels a little more tense. Like what just happened?
That's interesting. I mean, it's interesting you bring that because that's like when we had the detective who was talking to us about that. And
I listened to your body about fear.
And I actually read the book after he was on, and there was a lot of that was trusting your intuition, that you go into a room and you are basically being alive to the fact, going, you take in things with your eyes and senses and going, oh, that's telling me something. That's telling me that something about this guy, that there was a fear there or something. And I thought that was fascinating when I read that. And I went, that I could define his energy from that as going, I understand now what he meant, because you walk into a room and go, why did I feel suddenly nervous? Well, there was a reason. There was someone had a bulge in his pocket that looked like a gun, which I didn't notice what it was, but it made me feel something. You just get that scare.
Well, and I love that she brought up, yes, I mean, your senses, because my first book, Find Your Me Spot, is all about consciously using your senses to amplify your own life force, your mojo. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so we are all interacting with life through our 5 senses, usually unconsciously though. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that's why most of us are kind of like asleep or not very present to our day-to-day experiences. We're just kind of walking around, get up, take a shower, go to the bathroom, make a cup of coffee or tea, or go to your work. But when you stop and it's that literally smell the roses, but take a moment to actually smell, take a moment to just look around you, take that moment to listen. So when you consciously use your 5 senses, your 6th sense of intuition, which is called our gut knowing, okay, gut knowing, low in the body, all right, that gets amplified. Now, the gut knowing so if you put your thumb in your belly button and you put your middle finger onto your pubic bone and then lay your palm down, that, I call it my goddess pooch, but that is not just your low belly. This is your power center. Every human has this. This is where your life force, the majority of your quote mojo, lives. Anybody who's a martial artist, about this area. It's called your dantian. This is where you move your own personal energy from. Any MMA fighter, it's also your low center of gravity. That's where like the power moves are going to come from. It's not upper body. It's not necessarily the strength of your legs, though that helps. It's right here from this low belly, your power center. So, once you start to become aware of your senses and actively use your senses, that power center is like, this human is like back online, like really tapped into more of what's like the universal energy. So now when you walk in a room, you can really immediately understand, okay, I can feel, you can have a sense of like what's actually going on in that space. And then you can make a choice, stay or go.
So now I'm seeing a little the connection of how you wound up from like filmmaker, because that's your like visual, audio sense, speech, storytelling. How does that translate into you realizing people can relate and being like, hang on, I can, use the senses and energy to help people in a different way? Does your filmmaking career play into anything anymore? Or you just tabled it, or how do you
here's what happened. I believe that I got to Los Angeles because I needed to be here for all of the metaphysical and all of the healing work that I've gotten into in the personal development. Getting to LA back then allowed me to come out of the metaphysical closet.
Hi, dog.
There's some energy in your room now. I can feel it now. Yeah.
I know she's a good one. That's Lola. She sometimes likes to get involved.
Special guest, our first dog on the podcast.
Oh, Lola's going to be thrilled. She is a staple on mine. So usually she's just in the studio.
Thank you for loaning her out.
Yes. So in any case, I really believe that, the move from New York to Los Angeles was really about me being able to come out of the metaphysical closet and get to this career, like ultimately. And I loved everything that I experienced. Well, that's not true. I loved 90% of what I experienced in my film career. And I still utilize, because I was on the producer side of the street, and I still utilize that within my business today. I have produced 3 very large charity benefit productions of the Vagina Monologues to raise awareness and funds for a wonderful organization in Los Angeles called Peace Over Violence, which of course is very near and dear to my heart, as well as the Global V-Day campaign. So, my producer background, brilliant, for that.
Yeah.
So it still comes, it still comes in handy. But what's fascinating is when I look back at my life, and I think, and I really believe this for many of us, but when you look back to your childhood, there are seeds or breadcrumbs that will show you where you are today, where you get to. Because when I think I was in 5th grade, 6th grade, I don't know, young, right? At the sleepover parties, we'd be in somebody's house and there'd be the sleep sofa kind of pulled out for all the kids to powwow in one room. And I was holding court teaching about Barbie and Ken and what they might do, as this boy and girl. And so somehow sort of, I'm going to, in quotes, say sex education was fascinating to me from a young age. And then at summer camp, once I started to go through puberty, and I went through it a little bit earlier than some of my friends, I was holding court in the rafters at summer camp in the bunks, teaching the girls, okay, here's a tampon and here's what you do with the tampon and so on and so forth. And then we were talking about kissing boys and, so this quote career of helping women to step into their sort of most sacred, sexy, soulful selves has been happening since I was literally a little girl. And I mean, I would encourage listeners to even think like, okay, well, what is it that you were doing when you were young that you really loved? And how can that translate into either what you are desiring to do today, or where does that piece fit in? Because what I've seen when I talk to people is somehow that piece gets incorporated.
Isn't that definition of like how to, having a good life is finding something you love and then finding a way of making money from it, then you never work a day in your life, right?
Yes.
For sure.
Exactly.
Is that how it is for you now, you feel?
Well, I feel most days. I mean, there's some parts, one of my mentors was like, you're never going to love everything about what you have to do, right? Because there are just certain things that, are part of, quote, doing the business that, you got to do in order to get to the stuff that you really love. So that's still part of my world, but I do my best to keep evolving as me, Deborah, woman, individual, so that the work that I share stays fresh and relevant and interesting, certainly to me, because if it's not interesting to me, it's not going to interest anybody else. To me, that's the nature of my work. And so I'm I'm consistently looking at where do we expand? How do we grow? Where can I do something that is going to open it to the next level? And that keeps it fresh and interesting.
So would you say your dream is always kind of shifting with you as you shift, or is it just like the next level of the same journey?
Well, it shifts. So one of the things that I'm not saying this is totally unique about me, but I find it to be a little bit different. Remember on we would all career day and whatnot, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or what's your 5-year plan? And, what's your 10-year plan? I fucking hated those questions. Okay. I really did, because it was just never, I didn't quite know. Right. I knew what felt good. I knew what my interests were, but it was like, where is that going to go in 5 to 10 years? I don't know. I'm not sure. Who am I going to be in 5 to 10 years? Is the world even going to be standing in 5 to 10 years? I don't know. And so my experience, and certainly with my careers, they have called me rather than me calling them, if that makes sense. Like, it's pulled me versus me forcing it. And that has been very uncomfortable, frankly, because there's a lot of unknowing and being in the unknown. And there's a lot of getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, which I'm constantly practicing. Because right now I'm also in a kind of a big growth phase. And certainly do I have desires, and do I know where I want to go in the next phase of the career? Yeah, I have visions of that. And do I know how it's going to happen? No. So that's been the way. And so to put it under the context of dream, right, in terms of just like my dream, I mean, I love that I get to work for myself. So that is a dream, that I don't necessarily have to go to a particular office, and work for somebody else. That's a wonderful thing to do. I've just joked around like I think I'm terribly unemployable. And if anybody out there is into astrology, if you just look at my astrology chart, I mean, just unemployable. It's just like, this person needs to do their own thing. So I feel like I've lived into that quite well.
So, okay. So I understand you. Dave and I were both freelancers. So, sometimes things are like very stable and structured. And sometimes you wonder, will I really ever get to do that thing again that I love? But like, do you have a routine or anything you do in between to like help you listen to what the next thing is, or just to keep you grounded? Or,
well, what happens is when things get off, then I start to feel dull, angry, and irritated, like more days than not. And then I'm like, okay, hang on, Kagan. So, something is amiss. Like, you aren't feeling very mojo-licious, about what's going on with your work and with life right now. So when that happens, what I will do is slow down and sometimes stop. But the slowing down, I think, is very, well, not I think I know, because I talk to women day in and day out. That is one of the hardest things, particularly for anyone to do in this fast-paced world, right? Oh my God forbid, slow down, how things will fall apart. I mean, how is anybody going to survive? The family, the this, the that. And I promise you, if you slow down even 1%, you will open yourself up to hearing the next best or the next available step for you. Not what other people think you should do, not what, you even think you should do. You got to just slow down so you can really hear yourself. You can hear that like inner, whether you want to call it your inner voice, your higher self, your intuition, however you relate to it, God, just slow down enough. So that's what I do. I slow down enough. And then I'm blessed because I always hear like, do this, like the next available thing. And then I just go do that next thing, which sometimes makes zero sense, but I do it anyway. And it always has led me to great places. I'm deeply, I've trained myself at this point to be very, a keen and hungry listener of my intuition.
So I'm intrigued. So you're talking to women on a daily basis. Are they? How does this work? How's your day to day? as a Mojo specialist? What does that entail?
So, there's a mentorship program that I've run for many years now. And that's one of my favorite things that I get to do because it's a combination of the community, the group. So where we'll get together on Zooms and there are different topics, so we'll be either going over a certain module of content that relates to some of the teachings that I've created and the philosophy that I've put together. Really a framework. And then there are other days, where it will be just one-on-one sessions, right? So it's a combination of being able to communicate with my community en masse. And then other times it's one-on-one. And then it's also the business of the business. There's marketing to put together. Of course, there's like social media that happens. There's producing the podcast. Mm-hmm. So there's all of those other pieces of the behind the scenes that I'm involved in. Obviously I've got lovely people that support me in certain ways of assisting, but I do all my own copywriting. Certainly, like last year, my new book Undressed came out, and so there was a lot focused on getting that out and the marketing of that. So it's a combination of actual work with the ladies and then the marketing and the copy and the content creation that occurs.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
No, go, Casey, please.
I just was going to say, how do you feel like the vision of what you had for it versus like the reality of how it's going? How do they measure up with each other?
The reality of it is something that I just didn't know how good it could be. And also things that I had resisted. And I've had business coaches over the years who have really helped me to build this business because prior to the women's work that I do, I left the film business just for a little context. I left the film business as, somebody naturally would sort of back in the 90s. And I opened a feng shui consulting business because, right, that's what you did back then. Mm-hmm. Right. No, but nobody knew what feng shui was back in 1996. And yet I had read the 3 books that were available at the time, got very excited about this, really spoke to me. I didn't understand how to do it, hired a consultant. She, did my apartment at the time. I am somebody who thankfully can sleep anywhere, anytime, but I could not for the life of me sleep in this apartment, which was crazy making. And that evening, when she told me, we moved my bed and I slept like a baby. So I thought, okay, there's something to this. I did everything the woman recommended. And within 6 weeks, my life radically changed. I got a giant raise without asking for one. My health got better. My relationship at the time also blossomed. Like things just, blossomed in these beautiful ways. So I started to study it even when I was in the film business. And ultimately, when I left the business, people had been asking, what are you doing? You seem like things are different for you and what's happening, and do that thing that what you're doing at your place at my place. So basically, when I left the film business, a friend said, you should just open up that like feng shui thing or, because people are asking you to do it. And I was like, first of all, I don't know how to run a business. Second of all, who's going to pay me for this? And third of all, that's just crazy. Well, I'm a little crazy. And so I put an ad out and opened up that business. Never in my wildest dreams did I ever think I would have a feng shui consulting business. But there I was, one of the first ones in Los Angeles. And that grew, and I did that exclusively for 12 years, which was amazing. And I got to do many, large hotels in Vegas and, many of the agencies in town that, and studio offices and things like this. So it became a wonderful experience that I never envisioned. And then again, I did not see this shift coming to the women's work that I do now. And that occurred because of an intuitive message, an intuitive hit that happened. So I did not know it could be this. And to answer your question, therefore, it's like yeah, this is better than I ever dreamed, because I just didn't know that there was such a thing as being able to do what I do and support women in the way that I get to support them. It's like, I love getting to do this. It's better than I could have imagined.
That's phenomenal. Now I'm like excited to see where that shifts to.
Yeah.
And I know the book I read was the book that was mostly sex. So honestly, like I thought you were going to come on and it was going to be so much about like, here's how your sex life plays into this. Here's what you need to do about your sex life to change this. Basically like sexual feng shui, if that's a thing.
Yeah. The thing is, and the podcast, The Real Undressed, is all conversations about sex and or spirit. Mm-hmm. And again, the thing about, and why I'm so passionate about having the sex conversation and why I was just passionate about getting undressed out into the world, is first of all, because we don't talk about it enough, number one. And, sex education, certainly in the States, is abominable. And even the sex education that is out there, I think it's only 20 states or something, that it might be less than that actually, that are, you have to actually have the accurate sex education taught, so they can just teach stuff that's not accurate. Mm. It's horrible. So that reason I wanted to make sure there's more conversation about it. And also I think it's so important for everybody, but again, particularly for women, to know their own pleasure and to know what feels good and to be able to experience that with yourself, by yourself, and for yourself, first and foremost. Because the statistics show, of course, 1 in 3 women have gone through some sort of assault or rape or, trauma in some way in their lifetime. And what happens because of that is you disassociate from your own body. And so then you aren't even living in your body, like below your neck. So to be able to have a great relationship, to be able to show up to your jobs powerfully, or to be able to build a business that you want to build with confidence is nearly impossible when you are not in your body and own your own sensuality and sexuality. Because that life force and that power center that I was talking about, right below our belly button, above our pubic bone, that life force is sexual energy. It is the creative energy that makes everything, a great meal, a great orgasm, a great piece of art. Like, it is the same energy that creates. And so if you don't have capacity with that for yourself, it is very challenging to have, in my opinion, a holistically successful life.
That is powerful. Is there something that you wish like men knew that we could share with, that Dave can take back to all the other men? This is the official representative.
I'm representing men here. I am the
pressure.
Dave, and I love you for this. And I honestly, I'm going to share the thing that surprised me because, of course, yes, I wrote the book, I wrote Undressed for women. Okay, that makes sense. But what surprised me in the most delicious way is the men who have been reading it and the reviews that they wrote. Like, this is a playbook for, an insider's guide to a woman's mind. There was a gentleman who wrote to me. He said, I'm 60. I've always felt very uncomfortable and awkward around women. Like, I don't have much confidence. He said, I've read your book. And I feel like now I could actually go out and date and understand a woman better and know how to, be a better partner for her. So that kind of just blew my mind. I think it's important for men to understand that women carry so much, whether they have gone through some sort of trauma or abuse or not, there is still the weight of Are you a good girl? Or are you a bad girl? Or, the way that you've been raised and how you're supposed to be. And there is so much resting on our shoulders of how to present and how to be okay and how to be liked and all of this shit that has been going on for thousands and thousands of years that women have been carrying, that I think it would be really lovely if you took to other men and shared with them, like, okay, what's one thing that I could either be a stand for or could be a presence for the women in my life, to just make it a little softer for them. Make it so they don't have to put up their guard so much. They don't have to constantly be protecting themselves. Like, to be the guy who is like, I got you, babe. Or to say to your sister or, I don't know, your friend, like literally just woman friend, I got you. I got your back. That is such a gift to a woman.
I agree. It kind of goes back to what you're talking about, the fear book, Dave. As you were describing that, Deborah, I don't know if you were thinking the same thing at all, but like, I think for most women, maybe all, it is a thing that if we're out in the world, we're probably scanning for that kind of stuff anyway, because it feels like our safety could always be
all the time
at risk, even if you are alone with a man, right? You're like, well, how big is the space? Is the door locked? How well do I know this guy? How big is this guy? How whatever, like things that we maybe not even 100% consciously are like always scanning through, but to know like, and you are good at this, Dave. Dave is like a calm, safe presence. He literally maybe saved me from dying once when I almost would like really felt the need to get a picture of a pretty view and my heel got stuck in the wood and Dave caught me.
Oh my gosh.
So, thanks. You earned a lot of points there. But but if men just knew that like when we're out walking in the world, right, we've got all this shit in our head and the stories that society tells us, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, Deborah, but I'm like tagging on to what you say, but just to know like if more men could be like, hey, I'm a safe space. I get it. And I'm just going to like hold a little container here that you can like put some of that down because it's a lot to drag around.
Yeah. And also, by the way, like, it's not to say that men never feel, concerned or threatened or, like that. Like, I understand that there are moments that, yeah, you guys are looking around and, for your own safety as well in certain situations. So I'm not saying it's, exclusive to us. And I think this is where there's just one thing that I would say you could pass on.
And also, if we all have more and better sex, then those power centers will be intact and everything else will just be firing better, right? That's the real takeaway.
Seriously, if more people were actually having great sex and truly enjoying each other, like not drunk and, really connected, lovely, beautiful, like getting well fucked. And I mean that in the most high frequency way I can describe it. Like, oh my gosh, we would all be much more relaxed. The vagus nerve, which is the biggest nerve in our body, which is the one that does regulate our stress and our tension, like that would be happier and more open, which of course would then allow us to be more relaxed and frankly a better contribution to our workspaces, our families, our societies. Good sex can save the world.
Yeah.
And I think with that, we've got to go, we're well fucked with the time, aren't we here?
Oh, hey, yeah.
We've come to the end of the podcast, so we're going to have to move to the regular questions, but this has been fascinating. Men, listen to this one. All right. Casey, I think you should start this today with a question.
I want to know what inspired you this week.
Oh, okay. What inspired me this what inspired me was I got 2 new tattoos.
Oh.
and so that was and my time with my a very dear friend who I'm so blessed still tattoos because he doesn't do it publicly anymore. still tattoos me, and our time together so inspired me. It was just really beautiful.
You're brave. I'm not brave enough to get a tattoo.
No, so I need to know, what would you do if you won the lottery?
You know what's so funny? I was just having this conversation with my girlfriend last night.
Wow, what have you decided?
Literally. Well, okay, so we would. I mean, it was funny. We were just. I would start a foundation. I mean, there would be two things. There would be a foundation for animals, particularly dogs, and getting them out of shelters. Lola is a rescue, and she's a brindle pity. And anyhow, would definitely start a foundation for the animals, and also, of course, a foundation for women and girls. So that there would be that. I would set up also funds for my nieces, my sisters, my sort of family stuff. Make sure everybody's taken care of, and. And then like sort of the fun stuff, I was like, we're going to be traveling the world. Like that's just happening.
All right.
All the time. I'm doing that in a mini way right now, but like I would, do it in a bigger way of definitely seeing the world, because that's one of my big, big passions. And I would just be having like epic dinner parties like all the time, spreading the wealth, sharing it with my friends, meeting new people, tipping like, I don't know, $1,000 just because I could. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just want to like share the abundance. So There you go. That would be some of it.
I love that. I want to know, what is your favorite snack? And are there any that help you like up your mojo?
What is my favorite snack? Well, I'm quite partial to salty. So I really like whether it's potato chips or tortilla chips. You know what I mean? Like those definitely. I go for salty crunchy. Makes me very happy. But to up my mojo, and this is because I think it's very important to be tapped into your inner child. Mm-hmm. Your inner child plays a huge role in how available your mojo can be. I will go and get myself a boba drink. because your girl loves them tapioca balls. Go ahead and make all the jokes. But I love me some boba. And so that's like for the inner child. And then the adult me gets, like a matcha latte with boba. So that always will kind of perk me up.
I love that. Means like 10-year-old you is also living her dream. That's fantastic.
Totally.
So I want to know, what's your favorite animal and why?
Oh, that's not a fair.
Wow. That's what we've been reduced to.
My favorite animal? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, it's Lola. It's my girl.
Wow. You've not brought it down to a species. It's just actually one particular animal.
Well, wow. It's Lola. Yeah, I mean, she's my favorite animal. I so much so that after the first few months of having her, because I was not getting a dog. I had 2 cats at the time. I was like, I was not getting a dog. Oh, she fucking Jedi minded me. It was a thing. Like, trust me, I know we don't have time for the whole story, but I literally went to an animal psychic because I was like, were we like together in a past life as like, a relationship? This is weird, And she said, no, but somebody who is on the other side brought her to you. So Lola's my animal.
That's beautiful.
I choose Lola.
And then last question. If we really knew you, Deborah, what would we know about you?
If you really knew me, you would know that I am a sucker for bathroom humor and fart jokes.
I wouldn't have done that.
Did not see that one coming.
Nope.
And if you really knew me, and the people who really know me,
I had a whoopee cushion more right now.
Yeah. So I was like, for the people who really know me, and now all of you listeners, so if you want to find me out there on the IG, please send me all of the bathroom humor fart joke reels, because my friends send me that, and it literally makes my day.
We finally find out what you mean by energy. Excellent. We got there in the end.
This has been very fun and informative. And I can say, like I said, I'm reading Deborah's book, Undressed. It's very racy. So men or women, if you're looking for some ideas or what have you, Dave, I think you should read it. We can swap the Fear book and the Undressed book, and we can have a little book club, and maybe we start a podcast book club. Deborah, you're fucking delightful. Your dog, I'm sure, is adorable. She's got a solid bark. I'm glad she was our first dog on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Deborah.
I think this was some good energy on the podcast. So thank you, everybody, for sharing it with us.
Yeah, fart jokes all around. Thank you, Deborah.
Quick shout out to Mike Nicholas for being our tech savior, and Carmen Sclafani, also known as Wiser Time. Thanks for our music. And thank you all for listening.